Life after death. Eyewitness accounts.
After 38 years, the pain, horror and shock of that momentous night in October 1960 still haunts me. It is more difficult to explain the realization of God's infinite mercy and forgiveness that followed my suicide attempt and continued until today. What I am about to tell is definitely not a hallucination or self-deception. I am sharing what happened and I hope it can help someone, somewhere. Recognize and welcome the presence of God in his or her own life at a time when death may seem like the only way out. If someone had said 38 years ago that I would follow the treacherous path of lost faith to the very underworld of hell, I would have laughed. I married in 1948 to a beautiful woman named Pat. She was a popular girl and it was a great honor for me to win her. I was busy working on my goals as an accountant and too busy admiring the bright side that I couldn't even see the storm clouds gathering. In the following years, all my hopes, dreams and bright prospects collapsed. I used to be a moderate drinker and socialize from time to time, but I started drinking more and more, and before I knew what had happened, I had crossed the line of serious alcohol abuse. It was a hell of lost faith, fears, powerlessness and self-pity. After just 7 months of what I thought was the perfect marriage, I found out that my wife was cheating on me and that pushed me further into withdrawal and drinking. I, too, should have been blamed for the destruction of our marriage. Every time a new fling was discovered after that, whether it was a short fling or a year-long romance, I said a lot of hurtful things and did everything I could to make her feel very guilty. However, she was on a date when I finally decided to do something about what I thought was a completely hopeless and degrading situation. When Pat left, probably for the night, I put our 2 boys and the little girl to bed and listened to their prayers. For some reason, prayers at that time seemed to me petty and meaningless. I found neither confidence nor hope in prayer. I became a committed atheist. While the children were fast asleep, I collected the materials of what I considered to be my last escape. 2 bottles of sleeping pills and a vial of prescription from the first aid kit, tranquilizers that I stocked up, with the addition of 3 bottles of booze. I thought I had everything I needed for my great escape. I remember the doctor telling me not to mix booze with these pills or it might kill me. Then I had no desire to die. But nevertheless the conversation inspired the thought of suicide. I wrote a suicide note and shook out 5 tranquilizers. I mixed drinks with liquor and toasted my wife's empty chair. Let's drink to nothing. Make it nothing. The capsules slipped easily inside, and the false warmth of the drink washed over me. Let's hit the road, I thought, and there was no way back. My second drink did away with the tranquilizers and my fingertips and toes began to tingle. Well, maybe the pills won't work after all, I said to myself. I didn't feel drunk, just a little dull and a little light-headed. I had a nagging fear that I would be stopped in my attempt, as with everything else I considered important. So I swallowed another handful of sleeping pills. My hand was still firm as I poured the rest of my bourbon. What can I do? What will I do if it doesn't work? I felt a burning sensation in my stomach. My addiction to alcohol has become so strong that a couple of shots at dinner, a glass of beer on the way home, and 2/5 of vodka or bourbon when I ended the evening were hardly enough to dull my pain and disappointment. I don't want to wake up with another hangover and all my problems still gnaw at me. I don't want to wake up ever. I finished all the booze and pills and started to see a dark cloud-like formation, and it was coming towards me. It penetrated right through the ceiling of my kitchen. Penetrated inside and swallowed me. I felt myself moving through this tunnel at a very high speed. I saw a light at the end of the tunnel and wondered if that was where I was headed. I didn't know if I was alive or dead at that moment. But I remember looking back at myself lying unconscious on the kitchen floor, and I was lying there completely oblivious to this other part of me that seemed to heading towards something. This is death? I wondered. Not. Somewhere came the answer. I was shocked to see a creature of incredible beauty, radiating great love, great compassion and warmth. It was a being of beautiful, bright white light, with silver threads emanating from the center. I hesitated to say anything, and then I realized that this incredible being of light was reading my mind. Not. He repeated again. That's not what death is like. Come on, I'll show you. I remembered floating with him to some kind of pit in which there was a very depressing scene of a landscape devoid of beauty, devoid of life, where people wandered around with heads down and shoulders bent forward in a subdued, submissive manner. They lowered their heads, looked down at their feet, and wandered aimlessly, bumping into each other from time to time, but kept walking. The thought of me being cast down with these confused lost souls was terrifying. But the voice seemed to understand my horror and eased it with the following words. This is a hell of your own creation. In the end, you would have to return to Earth and start a new life again, facing the same difficulties that you faced in this life. Until then, you will be left with these lost and confused souls. Suicide is not an escape. I was shown a panorama of my life. The last 5 years, which have been so heavy with alcohol abuse, have been the most painful things, the most painful memories I could ever imagine. I was shown a picture of the impact alcohol had on my young children's lives and the impact it would have on their future. I saw the grief my children would experience if they lost their family and me. I was shown that their mother would not take good care of them and they would eventually be placed in foster care. I was also told about how my alcoholism would affect my children's lives if I continued to drink the way I used to and stay in this family relationship. I saw all 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, follow my bad example and each end up using the bottle to escape everyday stresses until each of them, in turn, became an alcoholic too. The spectacle of my precious little daughter growing up, marrying a fellow alcoholic who ends up beating her up and forcing an incestuous relationship on his 4 daughters. It was more than I could bear. It was like a slap in the face. Huge reality check. I saw that if I formed my act and began to behave like a responsible father and role model, all 3 children would grow up to be happy and productive. This does not mean that they are completely free from the difficulties of everyday life, but they will have a chance to forge their own path, regardless of substance abuse. I saw how my eldest son could become an important influencer in his day if I stayed around and behaved like a real father. I saw the downside of this future. If I stayed in their relationship as a drunken weak father, that he would eventually turn to drugs and end up in jail for the crimes he committed while trying to get drug money. It was terrible for me, and I decided right then and there that this was not what I wanted for my children or for myself. I was shown that if I continued to be a hopeless, miserable drunkard, I could not escape. I had to relive all the trials and traumas that drove me to suicide. I would have to face it again in another life, and it seemed more terrifying than I even wanted to admit. I cried. The light being seemed to understand that I was filled with feelings of remorse, compassion and love. He said in a stern voice, but it was still like a father speaking to his son, "You don't have to do as you please. Did you create yourself? Give yourself life? No. You also can't choose to die." I couldn't speak. I couldn't think. I cried more. That presence in the voice must be the Holy Spirit sent to me, I thought. The voice was softer now and continued, "I'm not finished with you. Your work is not finished. Come back and do what you had to do." The first thing I saw when I woke up was relief, my daughter's face. Nancy woke up at night and tried in vain to keep the spark of life burning in me. "Oh Dad," she said, "I was so afraid that we lost you. You were so cold and I couldn't even feel your heart beating." My wife was preparing dinner in the kitchen. "Go to dinner, children," she called. "And you, too, if you can drag yourself drunk to the table," she added sarcastically. I felt completely exhausted and very hungry, but not at all hungover. For some strange reason, I didn't have the excruciating stomach pain I felt the night before after taking such an overdose of pills. The best thing is that I still felt that inner love, peace and care that came from last night. It would be nice to say that life has been perfect since then, but that would be a lie. Separation and divorce broke my heart, although I kept the children. I wanted kids and they wanted to be with me, but my wife's boyfriend didn't want them. I finished my job as an accountant and became a professor at a local college, and it was tough. Using all my savings and retirement funds to pay bills and keep my family together during my month-long job search cost me all the security I could have had. And learning new job skills was both challenging and daunting. However, the peace and comfort that I first experienced while standing on the edge of the pit of hell never left me or let me lose my renewed faith and trust. Some friends can't understand why I don't feel bitter. The best answers lie in the 23rd Psalm. Yes, though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I will not fear evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. After my experience, I found that I no longer fear death, that I have a much more spiritual outlook. And now I take my responsibility for raising my children very seriously. I am by their side and proud to report that their lives are getting much better now that I am the father I was always meant to be. I met and married a beautiful woman who is beautiful inside and who gives me strength and courage to go through all life's trials and tribulations. I will never forget my experience at the edge of hell and what it taught me. A negative NDE is not negative when something good comes out of it. Now I am a pastoral consultant and do bookkeeping for small businesses on the side. My children are left to their own devices and lead happy, fulfilling, productive lives. I feel calm.
See also other interesting videos about life after death on our channel.